Welcome back to the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Justin Stoddart. Very excited today, even honored to have a friend on the show, someone who has been a mentor of mine for some time now. He's only known that for a shorter period of time, but someone who I deeply admire both in business and in life. And today we're going to be talking about value propositions, how to create one from someone who's created one both as a residential real estate agent all the way up to now as the co-founder and co-CEO of a network of sales teams, Place, as well as a large network of brokerages, kind of the Keller Williams franchise model. He's somebody who many of you know and respect. His name is Chris Suarez. Chris, thanks for coming on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure. I appreciate having me, and always enjoy our conversations, whether it's in a public setting or the ones that we have one-on-one. So appreciate what you do for our industry, my friend.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. For any of you that are looking for deeper learning, before we jump in here, I just want to remind you that inside the Think Bigger Real Estate group on Facebook, we take the topics that we're going to discuss today and then we go deeper on them to really help you engage with it. I find that I learn best when I'm actually participating in it. So please feel free to join that group if you're interested in going deep. Chris, let's get into the topic today. I know you're somebody, as I mentioned before, who started off as a residential real estate agent, and even to this day, you continue to do that work. Talk to us a little bit about how you've scaled to some of the kind of the highest possibilities within the real estate world, yet you continue to do the work. Is it because you love it or because you find more value and relevance for those you lead? Talk to us about kind of that role as still a licensed active agent.
Yeah. I think that's a really great question. And it's funny because I think a lot of people just envision that, well, you're detached from the day-to-day. You're running brokerage or you have teams that you're coaching. But the reality is before this call, I was negotiating an offer on some land. And last night, negotiated a property that we have listed out in Corbett for some good friends and a mentor of mine. And so I'm in it, right? Not as much as I used to be, but I am. Why? I don't think it has to do with being relevant, because I truly believe that you don't have to be selling real estate to be relevant in leading an organization or even coaching, right? Like there are many people that are out of production and are incredibly relevant. Do I love it? Yes. To this day, I do. And I choose to do those transactions actually, not necessarily because I love selling real estate, but I truly love the customer. For the majority of my time, my customer is a real estate agent, but I still have true customers that I have legacy relationships with that real estate was their path to wealth, and I'm still a player in that path to wealth. So for that question, it's because I'm very clear of who my customer is in each business vertical that I'm involved in, and I still have legacy customers that I truly love helping on this path to building wealth through real estate.
That's fun to hear that, right? That you can have a skill set, you can develop new skill sets. And then once you develop these other verticals, as you described, it gives you the ability to go back and stay relevant and present in these other verticals, but now be selective, right? To where you're not necessarily serving maybe everybody that would love to work with you, but key select people get that opportunity. And for you get the opportunity to serve them as well and serve them at a high level now. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. The only thing I'd add, Justin, to that is that while I am in it, I think I am always thinking about the consumer, the customer, and the business. And so there is some value for me to stay engaged because I see how did that experience work for my buyer? How did that experience work for my seller? And I've represented a buyer and a seller in the last week. How did that experience work for me as a real estate agent plugging into the platform that I am offering and the value proposition that I've offered to the industry as well? Right, you could say, well, you read your own books or you eat your own food or you drive your own car. For me, that is part of caring about the product and also a way for me to constantly reinvent, reevaluate, and improve the value proposition that in any business we're there to be part of. It's no different than they said that when Sam Walton would go and fly into random cities, and this is decades after Walmart had arrived, and literally go into the stores and measure the aisles and check product and engage as a customer, like to the point where they thought he was like, who is this guy in our store? And then they realized who he was. But he cared that much about what made one store successful, or what prevented one store from being as successful as the next, and also what would keep customers coming back. So I do think having a bit of neurosis probably can help business owners.
I'm sure there's some story where Sam Walton got escorted out of a Walmart because he was acting a little too strange.
There's 100% one. So yeah.
Can you imagine being that, that employee? I love what you said there, Chris. I think it's interesting because I have an interesting perspective on the industry because I'm not a licensed agent. People will share things with me about experiences that they have with their real estate agents that they probably wouldn't tell another real estate agent. And both from everything from the listing presentation to the execution to the negotiation to all of that. And I get really curious about that. And it's fun to be kind of a fly on the wall to some degree, a confidant for the consumer. And it's probably a similar, I don't know, it's a similar experience, but a similar outcome in the sense we just get really curious about what are the problems that consumers are facing today and agents are facing, right? I know we're kind of both in that space as well. And like, what's keeping them from having the best experience, getting to their best outcome? And how do we help bridge that? How do we help make that better? I think that's probably where, for the topic of our conversation today, where value proposition starts, right? Is it like, how do you really get insider information to find out what are people struggling with, what's not working? Would you agree with that? Or like, how else do you define like where value proposition starts, like creating one that actually serves?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think that one is understanding your consumer, and then two, being willing to listen to all the problems of the consumer. So for some of your audience, their consumer is and always will be, like, day in and day out, it's a buyer, or the consumer is a seller. For others in your audience, truly building real estate businesses, and they have agents that they are now working with and have partnered with to deliver the customer experience, then their consumer has switched or flipped, and their consumer is the real estate agent. And understanding what are the problems that the real estate agent faces, and providing a value proposition. See, if you ask me, hey, do you love buyers and sellers, or do you love real estate agents, or which one do you love more or enjoy more? I mean, the fact is I truly love the real estate agent more than the buyer or the seller. Don't get me wrong, I love I love the buyer and seller, but that's largely because of the desire to have an impact on the industry. And I know that if I can work with an agent who can work with 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 buyers or sellers, I'm actually affecting generational wealth, right? And moving that mission forward more than I can go out and connect with 100 buyers or sellers, right? Our organization, our sales organization, our teams sold 6,000 homes last year, right? So that's 6,000 families. The brokerages closed, over 8,000 homes. There's no way I would be able to do that. And yet I can impact a few hundred real estate agents that are out serving a lot of consumers. So for me, I take a step back, and honestly, what keeps me up at night, or actually I sleep real well, but what I think about during the day, during my waking hours, is truly, what are the problems that real estate agents face, and how do we create simple solutions to those complex problems? And therein lies sort of, if I'm gonna open up a notebook to, like, any day and start sketching out, like, how do I build a value proposition that'll win? It's understanding the complex problem and then simplifying a solution for it.
It's interesting. I did not have not had a chance yet to listen to, I think, a partner call you did just yesterday. I got an email this morning. I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Kind of what we can learn from the big kind of tech giants, right? Amazon, Facebook, and others. One thing that I discovered in the writing of my book, The Upstream Model, was that these big companies thrive off of finding ways that they can reduce complexity and reduce price. And what I hear you just saying is that for all of us, even if we're not big tech companies, we all ought to be on the similar mission, which is how do we reduce complexity for clients, right? And cost, I think we can look at through a different lens, because sometimes people hear that and they're like, oh, no, we're not, like I don't want to reduce my fees. And it could be just the opportunity costs, right? there's a bunch of other costs involved where we can, in fact, I had a client just recently who chose a different real estate agent because the last one had them so involved in the staging and prep of the home that as a well-paid professional in his day job, it just got very costly, right? So I think, again, reducing costs, reducing complexity goes back to kind of the heart of how do you create a value proposition that people will choose, right, over others.
Yeah, I think actually we sometimes use the word cost more than we should, and we as an industry, even with our customers and clients, need to use the word time and convenience. It's interesting. The NAR report comes out every year, and when you look at what a buyer wants and what a seller wants, there's a few things that are consistent on both sides of our transaction or both types of customers we engage with. But the one word that's on both sides is convenience. Sellers want convenience, right?
Yeah.
Case in point, you just shared that. Buyers want convenience. It's why technology seems to disrupt an industry. It's not that technology is better than the broker. It's just that the technology has created a more convenient value proposition for the customer. The only thing I'll go back to is, because you mentioned that, the top 5 tech companies and what lessons can we learn, that we believe you can learn incredible lessons about who they hire and talent. And at the end of the day, we're all in the talent business. But I would say one of my biggest takeaways as I began to research and challenge my perspective of who Jeff Bezos was as a leader. And I'll be the first person to say I've in the past not respected perhaps how he's run his company or built his company. I'm kind of the champion for the little guy. Like I love shopping local. When you look at where I buy my food and where I buy my clothes and where I consume things, I will always go and help the local business owner. Like I love the entrepreneur. And so because of that, my perspective of Amazon has always been, I don't want Amazon boxes showing up to my house, right? Like it's a battle with the family. And yet, as I looked at who he was and why Amazon was created, actually Jeff Bezos has done incredible good for the entrepreneur, incredible good for job creation in our country, right? The number one, it's incredible the millions of jobs he's created in our country and across the world. But this is, if I can share one thing that changed my perspective, and actually I have it on my desktop because it's so powerful. He said this, he said, customers, so whoever they are, for me, I insert real estate agents. So bear with me. I'm going to insert real estate agents. Real estate agents are always unsatisfied. Bezos says customers are always unsatisfied. This was a letter that he wrote to his shareholders in April 2018. Then he said this, he goes, they're always discontent. They always want more. No matter how far you get out in front of your competitors, you're still behind your customers. They're always pulling you along. See, sometimes we think about the competitor, especially in our industry, it blows me away, how brands and brokerages and they just go to battle. I mean, even potentially my own, right, outside of my walls, that's not even who we're fighting. We have to focus on our customer. For me, it's a real estate agent. For the real estate agent, it's a buyer and a seller. That's where we focus, and the customer will pull us along. Amazon became Amazon only because customers wanted things faster. They wanted things cheaper. They wanted more choice. And Bezos says, I never imagine a world where someone will say, hey, I want less choice. Hey, I want to pay more. And hey, can you ship that to me just a little bit slower? That won't happen. So then what are the non-negotiables for your customer? And as I build out my value proposition, Justin, I say, well, what are the non-negotiables for real estate agents? They don't want to do operations, or they don't want to spend a whole lot of time in operations. They don't want to battle with marketing. They need easy marketing. Lead generation is hard for everybody. So there has to be a simple solution for lead generation. Once the lead is there, some of us struggle with conversion. So there has to be models for conversion. As I grow, talent is a bear and a headache. So how do I attract talent, coach talent, right? Keep talent and retain talent. Financials, don't ask a real estate agent. So how do I have models for profitability, right? Coaching is a challenge because there's so many options out there. And then the last two is opportunity and leverage. What's my opportunity as a real estate agent, and where is leverage? Almost every one of those comes back to time. So I never have a cost conversation. It's always, what solutions does the brokerage or does my team or does my organization provide on operations and marketing and lead generation and conversion and financials and coaching and opportunity and leverage? Like, those are my simple solutions. So I have very few things to focus on. And as long as I have simple solutions for that, if you write those things down, it doesn't matter if you're solo real estate agent thinking about how do I take on these challenges, or a team or a brokerage owner. That's the value proposition we have to create.
And that's really, I think, a great way for every agent out there that's listening to this, again, with our audience being real estate agents, is my current brokerage solving those problems that Chris just described, right? The things that are a sticking point, whether it be the financials, whether it be the coaching, whether it be the lead gen, like whatever that is, look around and say, am I in the best place to get that problem solved? Because if you ignore it, it's not going to be of benefit to you long term, right? You can only brush it under the rug so far. And at some point, you're leading a much lesser quality of life, and offering a lesser quality of service to your customers. And I think there's going to come a point, and I think we're getting there, to where you have to be actually really good. Your value proposition has to be improving if you're going to stay solvent in this business, right? Like the competition is getting too thick, in my opinion, both from big tech as well as, marketplace factors. You just have to get better, frankly. And if you're trying to do it all yourself, I think you're going to burn yourself out. You'll be inconsistent, because humans are inconsistent. It really behooves you to be asking the question, like, who do I have helping me with these? It becomes a question more of who, right? Not just how. And I think that's a powerful concept for all of us to get our heads around, of like, who should I be in business with that helps me solve these big problems the best, right?
Yeah, I was reading the other day, and it was talking about when Jobs came in, and it was back in 1997 when Apple had almost become irrelevant. And some people will say, "Oh my gosh, the iMac or the iPhone saved Apple." And Jobs is an interesting leader as well, because he was kind of, there's definitely some ego there and some personality challenges. But one of the things I listened to, there was an interview clip of him, and they said, well, what product was it that saved Apple? And he said, it wasn't a product, it was people, right? And we've watched the movie or read the book, and he threw out this product and threw out that product and got it down to a narrow field. But he said, honestly, like that is what the outside saw, but what the inside saw was me looking at who were the most talented developers or who were the most talented minds. And he said, so it wasn't a what, it was a who. And I think that's where brokerage or even teams or real estate agents show up. I think people don't ask themselves, who would I like to show up and work around every day? Who is going to be thinking about me every day? Are they thinking about me as a real estate agent? Are they thinking about me as a P&L and a profit margin? Like the who, not even just in the day-to-day work, but that leadership team around you matters. And in that same interview, they talked to Ed Catmull, who was the co-founder of Pixar, who obviously had worked with Jobs, right, during his time there right, very closely. And he said that it was about the who instead of the product as well. He said oftentimes people showed up into the studio and said, hey, what are the best stories we have? Like, what are the greatest stories that we can bet on? And he said, well, gosh, that's the wrong question. He said, who are the greatest people to bet on? Because you can bring great people a terrible story and they'll make a great movie. But if you have a great story and put it in the hands of the wrong people, it'll be a terrible movie. So it doesn't matter what industry we're in. It does come down to who and the environment that those who's create. And I think our industry probably doesn't put enough value on that, because we still think transactionally instead of holistically what the industry should be providing agents, as a career path or an opportunity path, as well as our clients.
One takeaway for me, for everybody listening to this today, in addition to the one I shared, right, just really evaluating what does it take to be great consistently over a long period of time? What are the roles? And I'd love to hear your thoughts, Chris, on how you kind of walk agents through that kind of decision process of how they reinforce their brand, right? Obviously, you guys have some powerful networks to which people can plug into. But a lot of times, like it's in a blind spot. Agents don't even know that they don't have something in place, right? They've just kind of limped along, or they've been so good in one other area that it's just compensated for the fact that these other areas are not as strong and potentially kind of a hole in the, in the giant ship. What advice do you have for people, again, that are trying to evaluate, like, what are my potential blind spots, and like, what are the roles I should be filling?
Yeah.
In the organization.
I think my answer to that is we have to understand what we're good at and what we're not good at. And that's a simple answer, like, okay, well, recruit to your gaps or hire to your gaps. But if we only do that, then we're always going to be looking for support as opposed to looking for people that are better than us. Like, I keep on coming back because you reminded me of my conversation yesterday. But when Mark Zuckerberg hired Sheryl Sandberg, like, he hired his equal or better. Like, I mean, fact, like, she is as brilliant, more brilliant than he is in running a business. She took an unprofitable business model and turned it profitable, largely based on operations, but also based on sales. Like, he was a great visionary. She is a ridiculous executor. And I believe that Facebook would have been just like any other tech company or social platform if it wasn't for someone like Sheryl. So when you look around and you're looking at your organization, honestly, if you're the smartest person, or you're an organization built on an iconic human being, there's a reason why they became iconic. And I would say it's largely because, like, there wasn't anyone else for people to get challenged by or to think differently by. The addition to that is, oftentimes we look at a brokerage or we look at a team and we show up because we say, well, you're going to help me make money. You're going to, like, I'm here because I want to make more money. And we actually show up, like, to an interview, like, oh, like, well, by joining your team, I'll make more money. Great, I'm in. Like, and I say, no, you won't. Like, my job as a brokerage or even as a team or a platform isn't to make you make more money. It is to change how you think and teach you how to think. Like, I change how you think and teach you how to think about your business, but also about wealth building. And by doing that, you're your own opportunity. Like, you will make plenty of money if you want to change how you think about money and wealth and think about business. So I think that's probably as much the key to attracting the right kind of people as well. Because I have had some brilliant real estate agents, but they were not willing to change how they think about the business or think about people and talent and leverage, or even their financials, and they'll always hit ceilings, and then they'll look for opportunity elsewhere.
I think it takes a great leader, and I would say you are one of those who's able to look around and say, I need people, as you mentioned, that can stretch me. In fact, I think leaders become great only when they start to do that, because if you just get people saying yes, right, all the time and not saying, no, I think we should look at it differently, I think you as a leader, your growth. I mean, part of the reason for the genesis of this show is because I wanted to build a different network that allowed me to be in conversations like this. And so I'm able to go out and handpick, like, who do I want to continue to learn from? And I'm always hopeful that the audience gets a lot from this. But if nothing less, it's a powerful networking strategy for me, but more personal growth strategy for me. And I think all of us have to take a look at, who am I spending time with, and are those people growing me, regardless of where they're at on an organizational chart? Like, is everybody with whom I'm spending time with, whether they be customers or anything else, are they growing me? Because if they're not, I think there's an opportunity cost there that's we are incurring, whether we know it or not.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is every Friday, I have an organizational wide hour-long coaching consulting call, right? It's more of a conversation. It's built on conversations that I have throughout the week and where I believe that I can help the organization. And this Friday, I've written my segment on growth, like a growth plan. Like, what is the definition of growth? And what is the definition of a plan? Because oftentimes we're like, oh yeah, I have a growth plan. And if we unpackage the definition of growth plan, we don't. Like we have some classes we're going to take, or we have something written down because we started it in December or January, but there is zero plan around growth because we haven't taken a step back and said, hey, where in my business or where in my life do I need growth? Like it was the formation of our podcast Experience Growth around, like, wealth is one thing, business is one thing, but I believe that my obligation to our people is to help them grow in 6 key pillars. And this is like when you think, well, what's your value proposition? I will only attract people that I believe find value in these 6 pillars or want to grow in those 6 pillars, which then puts the responsibility of having some curriculum or plan in place to help them grow in those 6 pillars. So although a podcast is very public facing, I'll assure you it wasn't for the public. Like it was truly for my people, and it was a leveraged opportunity truly for us to attract to our value proposition as well. Those 6 pillars, it is career, right? Because that's a critical piece of us feeling fulfilled and growing and living experientially. It's our career, it's our relationships, it's health, it's personal growth, which is different because it's personal growth, spirituality, and wealth. If we aren't building those 6 pillars, or we don't have a plan to know which one of these pillars needs a little cement, or which one of these pillars hasn't begun to be built yet, then I believe that our life will sort of be out of balance or out of kilter, if you will. So that's what those conversations are built around. I've gone out and had conversations with people that are just building a career pillar, or a relationship pillar, or a health pillar, or a personal growth pillar, or a spiritual pillar, or a wealth pillar. And that's part of our growth plan. And actually part of our value proposition, which doesn't sound like operations or lead generation or marketing, but actually it's all of those things.
Yeah, I think when people really start to take a look at what's possible when you start to upgrade relationships, right? When you start to have those conversations that aren't even on the radar of most real estate agents, right? It's like, where do I go to get more leads, right? I have these conversations of like, should I go to this brokerage? I feel like that they can have this surplus of leads. And it's like, let's step back and look at a more holistic view here of like, ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish? And are those people going to help you to grow, right? Ultimately, because leads can come and go, and sometimes they're terrible and sometimes they're good, but boy, that's a tough place, a tough reason as to why you want to hang your hat somewhere, kind of very short-sighted. And I don't always necessarily say that, but I do think that there's a ton of value in always asking that question of where can I go to grow in all areas of life? Because like you said, I do think that there's some sabotage that ends up happening, whether it's self-sabotage or not, when you aren't growing in all those areas, right? Whether it be health, whether it be relationships, it always comes back to affect the business, which is ultimately kind of how we show up in people's lives. Those 6 kind of pillars, Chris. So it sounds like you've kind of implemented those into the value propositions of your different offerings, right? Whether it be place, whether it be your franchises within Keller Williams. Do you bring all 6 of those into that conversation, or how does that show up for you? Like, what does that look like for people that are kind of entertaining partnering at some level?
Yeah, I think that one, yes, tactically, we have specific curriculum around every single one of those pillars. And my engagement every single week on Friday allows me to focus on one or more of those pillars as well. Like we can't say we care about it unless we have regular conversations around it. And we can't say we care about it unless we have a plan or a path down to that pillar. So the reason why I think of it in terms of a path is I always say that the definition of leadership is bringing people down a path to their preferred future. So for you, Justin, you might like, we sit down, we have a conversation, and you say, you know what, Chris, like my spirituality pillar is really, really strong. Like I feel really, really healthy. My relationships are exactly where they want to be. Like the one part that I really need to grow in 2020, what year are we in? 2021. Let's not go back. 2021 is my career path is fuzzy. Like I don't have that 3 to 5 year plan, and I'm looking at what I've done for wealth building in my family, and I just don't have a clear path to retirement or building passive wealth. Well, great. So my job, if I earn the right to be in business with you, then I say, well, I think those are critical paths, Justin. So let's take you down a path to building a career and wealth. And so we're going to build curriculum around those too. You're not going to nail all 6 at one time. So we really focus. That's a personal relationship with each of our people, but we really focus on what their pillar that they're working on needs to be. For some, this year is about health, right? And so for them, there are health conversations, and that could be physical health, it could be mental health. Like we understand who our people are, and then say, do we have a path for them? Because if we don't, then I don't really think that I should be in business with everybody. Then it's just a financial thing, right? Like, oh, I want to be in business with everybody. No, you just want money from everybody, even if your path isn't there. That's why I don't feel like I compete with other brokerages, even, because I believe that they clearly offer a path to someone's preferred future. That is that agent's preferred future. As long as that brokerage is executing and helping you down that path because you're clear about it and they are, awesome, so be it. That's a cool relationship. And that's why it's good that there's offerings in the marketplace. But the day that I don't know what my people's preferred path is, then that's a day that, well, you just run a business and you don't care about experiential living. But that's my deep mission for the organization is that real estate agents, business owners should live life experientially, day by day, week by week, month by month, and not have those someday goals and the bucket list and in retirement and when I get to, like, that stuff just drives me crazy because we miss so much of real life in the process. So because of that, it's why Experience Growth Podcast was created. And honestly, why our value proposition is so much based on, if I sat down with my operations team, or you sat down with the operations team and you said, hey Heather, or hey Dawn, or hey, like, what are some of the questions that Chris, that Chris just asks every day? Like, what are the Chrisisms? Like the one of the first ones, they'd be like, what did you do to save someone time today? What did you do to save our agents time today? And that's because I value time so much. And time saved operationally is time that they could either go and sell real estate or make more money if they're working on their wealth or career pillar, or meditate or build spirituality, because people forget that and they don't invest time there, or they get a midday run or an evening workout, or like, so time is sort of that critical piece that I can actually help people with to make sure they're on the path to their preferred future of one of those 6 pillars.
It's almost the revenue, if you will, to building an experiential life is time, right? I mean, that's kind of the key metric that can offer that beyond, as well as other things, the education and the insightfulness around actually being in pursuit of that.
Sure.
That's obviously one component that I agree. I think a lot of people, especially in an industry that requires so much of people, as does real estate, you oftentimes, people don't create the space, right? And I think that's one of the key value propositions that you guys bring. Chris, I want to talk quickly. I know we don't have a ton of time, but I want to hear kind of your thoughts around, obviously, very tight market right now. There's a lot of competing offers, right? When you're on the buy side right now, you just know you're going up against some pretty tough competition. Taking these principles and applying them to a very tactical day-to-day situation in our current market, how would you take this concept of creating a value proposition to stand out, whether you're now competing for a listing or whether you're now competing for a house, right? How do those principles apply? What would you say would be some critical factors that people could take and apply today when it comes to their day-to-day work?
Well, I think what happens oftentimes in markets that we're in, especially in the buy side, I think it's easy to win with a seller right now. And actually we need to get clear about what our value is for those sellers, because some will feel that they have all the value that they need. All they have is a house for sale, and that's value enough. But I think specifically where our industry is struggling is on the buy side, right? On representing buyers. And that's because when you look at emotional and cognitive bias, what happens psychologically is pain has more of an effect on our memory than joy does, right? That's just clinical, it's scientific. And the fact is every buyer has one moment of joy. It's the one offer they get accepted. But what they remember more are all the offers that get rejected. Okay. Well, then think about you as a real estate agent. As a real estate agent, the reason why people are tapping out, or the reason why people are struggling, or the reason why people are discouraged, or the reason why people question, can I keep doing this? Or the reason why we need to have more conversations and more consultation and more coaching with our agents if we're in brokerage or running a team is because emotionally we need to accept the fact that we are getting more rejection than joy in the business, in the actual, right, I won this offer. And honestly, we win the offer and we forget that we won one because we have 5 families that are upset, or we have 5 families that lost. That's just understanding what emotional bias is. And I actually think understanding how our brain works and how understanding our emotional countenance works is important in the process. So what that means is anything I can do as a leader to sit down and actually look at, well, how can we structure our offers? How can we set some expectations with the buyer so that the emotional highs and lows don't happen? How can the fact is when there's 27 offers on the table, Justin, I'm not going to tell you that my offers get accepted every single time. They don't. Because it's based on financing, it's based on terms, and it's based on risk and risk aversion of the buyer. Like the one tactical thing I'll say is we sometimes get caught in how things have always been done and are not willing to change how we think about things. I look at buying a home and winning that offer as we used to come to the table and try to eliminate all possible risk for our buyer, right? And so we have this preconceived notion about what earnest money is and what happens to it. And we have this preconceived notion about what inspections are for and what happens afterwards. And we have this preconceived notion about, what an appraisal is and what happens. And we need to sort of clear that. And we need to even the playing field and realize that if I was a buyer right now and owning a home truly was important, and it was a big part of my financial well-being or my path to wealth building, I take some risk. Like I see people playing the stock market, taking more risk than they are in writing offers on homes. And I'm not giving this as advice to you for your buyers, but I think we're so scared to see our buyer lose $5,000 or $10,000 of cash in an earnest money situation that we won't allow it to go non-refundable after, right? Or we won't allow the deal to be subject to not subject to an inspection. Listen, my buyer can write an offer, put down $5,000 or $10,000 and have an inspection all day long. And yes, I can write it not subject to an inspection, right? Or not contingent on the inspection, knowing that if something is horrifically wrong with this home, you have a choice to make at that moment. The house is yours if you want it, or you lose $10,000 to walk away. And some people are like, Chris, you're crazy. Lose $10,000 or continue renting. Like I think that money is made back up very, very quickly. And there are very few things that are wrong with the house that we're actually just playing the risk game wrong or protection game wrong. And I think that's because we're always in Oregon. See, being exposed to different cities where earnest money, the minute you write is all of a sudden goes hard after fully signed around acceptance, or in New York where there's always lost earnest money if you pull out inspection or not. Like there's other states that play this differently, but because we've always played it this way, we actually advise our clients improperly instead of having this risk tolerance and how much money are we willing to lose for the right to win.
Well, I think that's amazing tactical advice that everybody ought to be reevaluating these industry norms. That are they at play still? Like are they still relevant? And kind of going back, I mean, what shows up for me again is this concept of opportunity cost, right? So yes, they're risking something, but what are they risking by not doing something? And in fact, it was shared with me again just recently that whatever financial target you have, let's say it's $500,000 a year, right? Let's just say that that's a goal that an agent has. Big goal, right? It's a great goal. Let's say that they last year made $100,000 a year. How much did it? And you take a look at, people are always evaluating whether it be coaching, whether it be brokerage costs. And the real question is, how much did it cost me last year to not know how to reach my goal, to not know how to produce at that really high level? It cost me $400,000. So all of a sudden, when you look at it through that, it's like, okay, if I went over here, could these people, the who's, teach me how to do that? Well, yes, they've got a track record of doing that. And okay, great. Then every year that I'm not with the right person, the right group, it's costing me $400,000 a year. All of a sudden, like brokerage costs and fees and everything else starts to become pretty quiet, right? Pretty irrelevant. And I think for buyers having that similar conversation of how much does it cost you every month to not have a house, looking at current appreciation rates, right? Rent increases, et cetera, you really start to open people up to a new awareness of, wow, it really does make sense to maybe risk a little bit more, you know?
So I think Justin, if I could go there, that comes back to the earlier conversation of in business, we should partner with people that are going to teach us or coach us on how to think. And I had a conversation with an agent that I love, actually, I've always respected. And in that agent came to me and said, well, gosh, I think I'm going to make a decision around brokerage because I'll be in the business for 5 more years, right? I'm really slowing down. And this brokerage is $10,000 a year cheaper. So over 5 years, that's going to be $50,000. And I get to put that in a retirement account. And that $50,000 could be 70 after 5 years. And so it's really a $50,000 or $70,000 decision. And I looked at that and I just said, okay, can we have a conversation of how to think about wealth building and money? Because ultimately you are taking money or wealth building advice from someone that believes that you are worth a savings of $50,000 in 5 years. And that scares me because I ultimately believe that if you have 5 years left in this business, that truly you could be putting away hundreds of thousands of dollars a year without working harder or spending more time. But see, if my value proposition is saving money, I would, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't all be saving money, but if my value proposition is saving money, I've just told you what my value proposition is. It's coming from a place of scarcity of the unknown and a lack of confidence in the fact that you are valuable in the industry and actually we just don't know if you're going to be able to generate revenue. Like I would like to look at your talent and say, how do we put away $125,000 so your $50,000 at year 5 is actually the worst wealth building advice you could have ever accepted? And then I just challenge, where did you take that advice from? And can they show you how they've built wealth over the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, or they're 30 years in the business? 30 years in the business doesn't mean you know how to build wealth in this business. It just means you've worked hard and you're tenacious and you have grit. Because you've lasted 30 years, I would give anyone an award. But it doesn't mean we've earned the right to teach people how to build wealth in this industry. And that's my challenge. Like, we have to look at where we're getting specific advice for. Am I the best person to go to for advice on all 6 of those pillars? I'd be an idiot if I told you that I was. But my goal is to provide mentors for wealth building, mentors in health, mentors for spirituality, mentors for personal growth, mentors for fill in the blank. Not try to convince you to work with me because I'm going to save you some money, or I'm going to give you the most leads, or like I have a really cool fancy CRM, or all of those may be true, but that isn't my attraction model. So I would say, like, hey, where are you going? What was their attraction model? Should you question that?
Yeah, that's powerful. It really is raising people to a higher level thinking. I want to ask one more question, Chris. Are you okay on time?
Yeah, I'm okay.
So let's talk about thinking bigger, right? That's the essence of this show. My personal mission and passion are to wake people up, to help them to recognize that there's untapped potential inside of them, and then to inspire and help them to live in pursuit of that, kind of a forward lean towards that potential with kind of I can do and be and experience more, right? And I'd love to hear from you what you do to continue to stretch your possibilities, to continue to be a big thinker yourself, which just over here over the past few years, it's been so fun to see just some enormous steps you've taken. Talk to us kind of what that looks like from you, your personal growth plan, your thinking bigger plan?
Yeah. One of the things I heard recently that has really stuck with me is if you're not more interesting every day, then people will lose interest. And so I asked myself, am I more interesting today than I was yesterday? All that means is, am I saying the same things that I've always said the same way that I've always said them? Like, am I learning or not? If I'm not learning, then people will come to the organization, get what they need, and then they will move on. And they should, because and that's not a bad thing. That means I had an impact on them for a period of time. But if I want to build a legacy company with legacy relationships, that means I need to be more interesting tomorrow than I was today, which means I need to learn something today that I didn't know tomorrow. And I need to be able to conceptualize that, think about it, and deliver that in a way that I believe will move people down a path. And in my world, in one of those six pillars. Now, I think what that can be overwhelming and that can be exhausting. And it's only overwhelming and exhausting if we believe that we always need to be the hero. So when you say, gosh, how do you think about that? Or what does that growth plan look like for you? Joseph Campbell's work, I think, one of his books was The Hero with 1,000 Faces. He talks a lot about how everybody does want to be a hero, right? Everybody wants to have impact. They want purpose. They want meaning. They want to feel like, Brendan Burchard says, did you live? Did you love? Did you matter? Like we want to live experientially. We want to have great relationships and feel loved and deliver love. And we want to know that at the end we actually mattered. Joseph Campbell says, be careful that you don't want to be the hero in everybody else's life as well. So the way he described it in a paper that he wrote was this. Sometimes we have our world sort of mapped out. Like we have our value proposition mapped out. We have our plan for everybody mapped out. And we said, okay, well, I need this person and this person and this person and this person. We go in like a director of this movie. It's our movie. And we cast people into these roles. I'm the hero and I need a Robin. I don't actually watch movies, so I'm terrible with this, but I need all these supporting casts. Like you pick your favorite movie and you cast everybody and you're the hero. And he said, and that's the wrong way to do it, because everybody wants to be a hero in the movie playing in their mind and their world. And so ultimately, he said, you don't want to be Luke Skywalker, you want to be Yoda. Yoda was the guide. And Yoda was okay with everybody being heroes, the hero that they wanted to be. And that's how I look at myself as a leader, or wanting or intending to be a leader, is understanding, hey, what makes you a hero? Like Justin, if I was going to sit down, how do you become a hero in your world? Can I guide you to becoming the hero at the end of the movie, at the end of your movie? It's not my movie, I'm just the guide. And so I think that one takes a lot of pressure off, but it also puts some pressure on that I need to understand where people want to go and then make sure that I'm learning or providing opportunity, a path to opportunity for them to go down and plug into.
I think there's tons of layers of that, right? And I think, you and I both being men who have kind of a strong spiritual background, I think there's probably some lessons in there, even about our Creator, right? That there's much of the growth plan comes about helping us succeed at a high level. And I think that there's, for all of us that really want to live experiential, fulfilled lives, it becomes less about our own hero story and more about how we can really contribute in the lives of other people, as you mentioned. I think there's way deeper success and significance involved in that, as well as just fulfillment, right? Just feeling like your life matters. I love that analogy. I've heard kind of Donald Miller say it similarly, right? To be the Yoda, not the Skywalker.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Thank you for refreshing that in all of our minds and sharing with us kind of your game plan for having, for being a big thinker. So, Chris, I appreciate our friendship more than you know. I appreciate your contribution today. To everybody listening here today, please give us some love, whether you're watching this live or after the fact. Please let us know in the comments if this has been helpful. If you're listening to it on the podcast, please give us a review. That will, again, help extend my mission of helping people to think bigger. And my gratitude again to you, Chris. And then my final charge to everybody here are these 3 simple words, and they are go think bigger. Thank you, Chris, again for your time.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, buddy.
Good.